So we're going to solve for y and then find the values of y for each given x. So here's our equation. To solve for y in this equation means to get y by itself. To get y by itself, we have to get rid of the 3x and the -7, but you have to do them in the correct order. So the first thing to get rid of is the 3x. And how do you get rid of 3x? Well, it's being added to -7y, right? So I subtract it. So subtract 3x from both sides. And when I do that, I get -7y on the left, and I get 19 minus 3x. They're not like terms, so I can't add them together, right? I just have to leave it like that. No one said it's going to be pretty. Now to get rid of the -7, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they have to add 7y. But adding 7y will just move the y and the y over to the other side. What I want to do, remember, is get the y by itself. So how do I get rid of, I don't want to get rid of -7y, I want to get rid of -7. And you don't get rid of -7 by adding it in this case, because it's not being added to y, it's being multiplied by it, right? Do you see that? So how do I get rid of something that's being multiplied? I divide it. And that's why it cancels out, and I just get y by itself equals, and you can probably leave the answer like this because they didn't ask you to put it in any specific form. They just asked you to solve for y, and we've done that. Solving for y means get y by itself. Okay? Now, later you'll learn about slope-intercept form and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to confuse the issue here. The next step is to find the values of y for each given x. So we have 3 different x values that we're given. So we're going to literally find, there's a couple ways you can think of it. You could think of it as an xy chart, and the x's that they're giving us are -1, 0, and 1, and we need to find the different y's for each of those. So to do that, we plug in those different values in for the x into this second equation. Why wouldn't we do it into this first equation up here?
Because it was looking for y.
Yeah, because we already solved it for y. We already got y by itself, so we've made it simpler to do this process. That's the whole kind of the point of this problem. So when I plug it in, I'm going to be very careful. Let me just give you one hint. Whenever you're plugging in, use parentheses. So see how I'm plugging in for x, plugging -1 in there. Use parentheses, and then this just becomes an order of operations problem. So I'll do this down on the lower left. What would, if I said simplify this, what would you do first to simplify that?
3 times -1.
You do 3 times -1 because, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and really it's kind of like there's a big parentheses above that because it's all in the numerator, right? And then this is being multiplied, so you do that first. So this is going to equal 19 plus 3 over -7. 19 plus 3 over -7. Now I do the numerator first, right? Because that's like in parentheses, right? So that's 22 over -7, which, by the way, can just be rewritten as -22/7. So this is just -22 over 7. Now let's do that same thing, but this time for 0. Let's plug 0 in for x here. So let's again write it out and use parentheses to plug in the 0. And then do the math. Well, we can do this kind of by ourselves. What's -3 times 0? That's just 0. 19 plus 0 is just 19. 19 over -7 is -19 over 7. So there's that one. And then for the last one, again, same kind of deal. We're going to plug in the 1 for x. 19 minus 3 times 1. Notice how I'm using parentheses. Always, that's a good idea to do. And now plug it in and chug it out. That's 19 minus 3, which is 16 over -7, which is like -16/7. So there are your 3 different answers. Now the next step that you'll have to learn how to do is that you're going to learn how to graph all of those things, right? And to graph them, that's why you want to use slope-intercept form. And again, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole week-long lesson.
Okay.